What's going on, guys? So today we're talking about the top 5 best budget decks for right now. I put the budget at around $100 to $200, trying to stay as far underneath the 100 as possible, taking into effect that the more expensive the deck gets, hopefully the better the deck gets, and hopefully the trade-off of like spending more money to get a better deck isn't as bad as it would be for like a Dragon Link or a Dinosaur deck. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So the first deck, obviously, as you can see, I want to talk about is Infotrack Machina. So Infotrack Machina is a deck that I actually had on my channel. There's actually a deck for it on my channel that I posted recently, right? And this 180 mark, like I said, this is like on the higher end. Me personally, I wouldn't get this version of the Machina deck, Machina Infotrack deck, specifically for this reason. I actually think you can get a lot of these cards for a lot cheaper than $180. And this is a very interesting strategy where you can play a type of board where you can put out different forms of disruption, different forms of negation. But what's really great about this, it's similar to another strategy on this list where its ability to consistently do the same thing every single turn is borderline second to none as far as the budget decks are concerned. But it can just honestly summon the biggest monster on the board and make them unaffected by card effects, right? So that's like super great. Like this, number 81 Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Super Dora has always been an insanely powerful card, and it just waits for the right strategy to come along that can play it. So the next deck I want to talk about is going to be Salamangreat, right? And so I just wanted to show you what these cards, I clicked on what I thought was the best version of these decks on eBay, right? And so there's only one Flame Buffalo. You definitely want to run at least 2 Flame Buffaloes in the strategy. But looking at this, it's like $64. Like, just say this now, this deck functions super well with Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs. Every single version of Ash Blossom's $20, right? So one card being $20 is usually on the higher end for budget players, but if that's the most expensive card you're gonna have, you're looking at literally, like I said, $50 to $100 for that, and then $60 for Ash Blossom alone. But the thing about Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs, there's a reason, right, that it's that expensive. And obviously too, with the Infotrack Machina deck, you could run like a card like Zeus, a Zeus. It's a fairly relatively expensive card. That's why I didn't include it in I was talking about the strategy. But if you look at Salamangreat, it's still able to do the relatively solid board of a Sunlight Wolf, Roar, and a Rage, right? So the Rage is going to get you 2 pops, and the Roar is going to get you a destruction effect. And in some cases, some boards just can't beat that. Obviously, you can run cards like Rival of the Warlords and Gozen Match because they're all Fire Cybers monsters, right? And so that's the cool thing too about Salamangreat and really any trap variant deck. They're going, like, if a deck is budget, and it's budget because it's a trap, it can run trap cards very, very well. Salamangreat being one of those cards. You're going to have to know what trap cards are good, what trap cards are not good right now, right? And really that's up to, what the meta is of your locals, what the meta is that you're seeing online if you're playing on Dueling Book or EDO Pro, and what the meta is of any tournaments that you decide to go to, right? The next deck I want to talk about, this deck kind of just goes without saying, it's one of the most talked about like budget decks right now. It's honestly like probably of all of the 5 decks here, it's probably the best one. The thing with Virtual Worlds and make it so intriguing is that there's obviously the aspect of summoning Shen Shen, who's a walking macrocosmos for your opponent, which has always been super great. But on top of that, it's also the consistency with cards like Virtual World Gate Chuchi, as well as Virtual Gate Klingling. I never know how to say this card, right? But what's also super cool about this is that there's a lot of tuners as well as there's a lot of level manipulation. So you see a lot of level 6 monsters, level 3 monsters, so you can run a lot of level 9 synchros, which this deck does super well. You can run a lot of level 6 synchros, which this deck does super well. You can run a lot of rank 6 Xyzs, which this deck does super well. You can even run a lot of rank 3 Xyzs. The next deck I want to talk about is actually going to be pure Zoodiac. Now, obviously, pure Zoodiac does run Zeus, AA Zeus, similar to Infotrack Machina. Now, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than Infotrack Machina, and that's because these cards have been reprinted a few times now, right? And I think you want to run more than one Thoroughblade, right? And Tenki as well, but most of the cards are super easy to get a hold of. And the thing with Zoodiacs that's always been super duper great about Zoodiacs is you can literally summon a Dryden and pass. And it's so easy to summon a Dryden where you can literally play a Zoodiac monster, do a couple of Zoodiac Xyz monster effects, and then play a Dryden, and then pass, and your end board is, once again, maybe a Gozen match, or a Torrential Tribute, or a Rivalry of the Warlords, right? Just, or an Imperial Order, Anti-Spell Fragrance, right? Or maybe in your hand you have a Nimbiru, and an Ash Blossom, and a Phantasme, or a D-Shifter, right? There's a reason why this strategy has been so consistently good ever since it's like the dawn of its existence. Another really cool thing about Zoodiac is since it does run a lot of rank 4s, you can throw in other rank 4s in here as well, like an Abyss Dweller or a Baguska. You can also run some Infotrack cards as well that make this strategy a little bit more budget and a little bit better as well. And depending on where your budget is at, you could probably get this and Zeus for a little bit under $200. And for a really competitive Yu-Gi-Oh deck, which Zoodiac is, that's not too shabby at all. Now, there are some decks that kind of come to mind when you think of like the best budget decks that I didn't talk about. I think like Ultrageist is definitely one of them that a lot of people were talking about. Prank Kids is another deck that a lot of people were talking about. I think both of those two strategies are very, very good. They're right in that Virtual World Tier 2 strategy. Like, I think both of those decks, if you have access to those cards, those decks are, relatively speaking, budget, but they're on the little bit more of expensive side. It's probably going to definitely run you $200, if not more, to completely build a full power Prank Kids deck or a full power Altergeist deck, right? And then there were some other strategies that always come up, like Crusadia, Cyber Dragon is another strategy, like the OTK heavy strategies. There's just not a whole lot of consistency going on, and the issue with OTK strategies right now, we are seeing Mystic Mind's a 5-6 card and it's only going up from where it's at, and then cards like Forbidden Droplets, Lightning Storm, those Tactics Talent, those cards need to be ran in most going second strategies as well. If you have access to those cards, by all means you can play a going second OTK strategy. Play Battery Man if you want to, but this list is specifically for decks that can function without buying those expensive cards, right? The only exclusion to that was really Salamangreat, kind of definitely needs Ash Blossom, and you could argue Infotrack Machina as well as Zoodiac kind of needs Zeus. So obviously there's another deck that's usually kind of considered budget and is obviously tier 2 strategy, it's PK Fire, but I think the introduction of Phantom Knights makes it no longer a budget deck. The last deck that I saw come up a lot was actually Tri-Brigade, and the only reason I didn't include Tri-Brigade on this is honestly, I don't really think the strategy is that good. Right now we're talking about Burning Abyss, and looking at this exact list here, it's actually a pretty, relatively speaking, like, full, solid list of Burning Abyss cards. I mean, you can get all of the cards for 90 out. Of all of the listings I've shown you on eBay, this is the only one that I would say is, like, the closest to, like, what I would consider to be the right price for the cards that I'm getting, right? The thing with the strategy, especially since one of the more recent ban lists did bring Graph and Seer all the way back to 3, is that this deck's consistency is through the roof. It always has been, even with Graph and Seer both at 1, this deck was still super duper consistent. Now, the final thing I do want to mention, in Burning Abyss, Salamangreats, and Zoodiac all kind of fall in this category, and you're not saying Infotrack Machina and Virtual World don't, but they can kind of function super well on their own. A lot of these strategies are boosted by the presence of how good these strategies combine with other trap cards, like just like a bunch of trap cards. Like there's certain strategies in the game that just don't really run a lot of trap card floodgates super duper well, but Burning Abyss, Salamangreats, Zoodiac can. But the caveat to that is you're going to have to know, one, what trap cards are really, really good for the meta. It goes back to that conversation, good for the meta of your locals or online or a tournament that you're playing in. What trap cards are good for that? On top of that, you're going to have to know when is a good time to play these trap cards. Is now a good time to strike? Should I save the strike? This, that, and the other, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What budget decks are you looking at going ahead for the future? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Click that like button if you did like the video, and obviously if you want to see more videos like this, I can do more top 5 different things, different cards, different decks. Just let me know in the comment section down below, and subscribe for Yu-Gi-Oh content on stuff like that. But most importantly of all, have a great day.